Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Brian's friend Liam,
And I'm Leon's friend Brian.
and today we are continuing our Star Wars review series with the second film in the franchise based on when they were made, and that is The Empire Strikes Back. Now, Brian, this is the movie that you have said is your favorite film in the franchise as well as your favorite film of all time.
Oh man, hands down.
So, honestly, I think the best way to open this up with is I'd love to hear your thoughts on what it is that about this movie that resonates with you. Just one as its own film. What makes this film stand out to you with the original trilogies, and just honestly, what it is that you just love so much about it? More than just from the idea of like film techniques and everything, but what emotionally, personally, for you resonates the most?
Mm-hmm. So first, as a Star Wars fan, I think this is the strongest film by far. You start with A New Hope, and they set it up beautifully they set up this whole entire universe for you beautifully, and then you walk into this movie, and it starts with the Battle of Hoth. Everything on Hoth is just intense. And it goes from there right to Yoda. You're meeting Yoda. It's just jam-packed. As soon as Yoda happens, you're going to Cloud City. All of a sudden, the carbonite scene happens. All of a sudden, you lose like part of the Fellowship. It's action-packed start to beginning, and I think it's the best writing. I think it's the best directing. Just everything through and through. I think it's Star Wars at its peak. And obviously, sets up Return of the Jedi on just unbelievably. For me, especially like whenever I watch these movies, I have a hard time not watching Empire Strikes Back, The Return of the Jedi, just as one big movie. And so as a Star Wars fan, man, I love it. It's got the best characters. Boba Fett's my favorite. It's just everything about it is just so fun, so action packed, but at the same time, it's such a smart movie. On a more personal level, like I think it's for me, my favorite is I obviously, like most people, saw it when I was a lot younger, and then I really resonated with the character of Luke in this movie just because, the whole movie it's trials of Skywalker, really, from start to finish, and you're seeing him ultimately failing in every step he takes, but with every failure he's doing it out of love for other people, but he's also learning from it, and everything he does is for others. And it's just been growing up and just watching that and just seeing how through your failures you could still become a Jedi. You can still conquer anything. For me, that just really spoke loudly within me, and just really kind of, I don't know. It was a good friend growing up. It was always very encouraging to watch. And yeah, man, Boba Fett's just awesome. Yeah.
One of the things that I think is really, really interesting with this movie, because I've seen it like 4 times now ever since we started talking about doing this. You're definitely right about bringing up how the trials of Luke, and how he's almost constantly failing throughout this movie. And I like how you said he's constantly failing, but for his friends. There's in the very beginning of this movie where Luke is in the Wampa cave, for instance. That's a moment where he's like in a complete I'm in a bind, and he has to figure out a way to escape, and he's able to tap into. It's really cool that now we see that the characters have kind of grown a little bit by Luke being able to show us a new element of the Force by centering himself and actually being able to pull the lightsaber from a greater distance. Because I don't think that was established in A New Hope in terms of what the Force was able to do.
No, and that was definitely the first time you see Luke really being able to use the Force. But even if we backtrack a little bit, how did Luke get there? It was because he's riding his Tauntaun. Him and Han are out together. Han's like, let's go back. He goes back. Luke decides, no, I'm going to hang out on my own. So he steps back on his own because he sees a meteorite hit the ground. So he goes to venture off on his own, and he gets captured by this Wampa. So he's not even the movie's not even started, and he's already failed. He's, at least our perspective, his first solo venture, and he's kidnapped by a snow gorilla.
Right.
And it's but then when he gets in there, it's, he's failed seeking out what he originally intended to do, and now he's in a situation, and he's able to take what he's learned, and he's able to free himself with using the Force. And so you're seeing the growth in him, even though, as soon as he does it, he gets out. He doesn't kill the Wampa. He just takes off its arm. But then he goes off into a storm, and then he has to get saved again.
Yeah.
The movie's not even 10 minutes in, and he's getting saved twice already. But it's, again, like, it's just, he got out. A smart Jedi would have, okay, let's decapitate the Wampa. We can cook the Wampa for food. We'll stay in the shelter. We'll wait overnight. We'll send out a signal. He just runs out.
Right.
Making this thing angry. So it's, less than 10 minutes. He's already failed twice, like, super hard.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about that, because he could have been able to go inside the cave. You could say, oh, maybe there's more Wampas, but we only see one. So based on what that is, it's not really an expression of showing that Luke is, it's basically showing Luke is not fully, what's the word? It's like not fully controlled of his own level of either the Force or even his own emotions. He's still very reactionary. It's like, okay, I was able to get the Wampa's arm off, so I'm out of some danger, it's distracted. So now I need to get out of this place before that thing is able to, come after me. And the Wampa has a sense, because the Wampa is like, this thing just cut off my arm. I'm not going to chase after it. But no, and then he goes out, and so that action of like, I'm going to go run to safety. But even then, I'm like, maybe he didn't know what time it was, because he didn't know how long he was blacked out. He didn't. Maybe it was a different day or something. Maybe he just be like, I'm gonna, radio away for somebody else. But it's just a greater evolution towards his character in this movie. And I think that when I was taking notes on this, the two characters that have the best evolution in terms of introducing a new side of them on a similar extreme is Luke and Han. What I mean by that is, in the first film, Han was very self-serving. He was an individual who only cared about money. He only cared about himself, his own priorities. And then by the end of that film, he showed that he had grown into somebody who cared about his friends and would put himself out there for his friends. In this movie, we see he's still trying to get out of the, away from the Rebel Alliance. But once he hears that Luke is in danger, he immediately goes out and risks his own life. Like, he has no real care for his own safety. So now he's on the opposite side of that extreme. He's very much somebody who is he's a self-sacrificer in respect for his friends.
Well, not even does he not take off. He leaves Chewie behind, and he goes off on his own to save his friend. So it's like, even that, it's like, you look at the beginning of the movie, it was Chewie introduced Han to Luke. And it's like, you're seeing Han take steps into his own character and showing he does care for people. It's I actually never thought of that before. That's a good point.
In terms of how like he's like flipped completely.
Just the character development, yeah.
Well, it's full of that, and it's one of those things that this opening whole sequence. Basically, it's the prologue of the movie, from the point where Han and Luke are. From the point when Luke is like in the Wampa cave to the point where he gets saved. Once they get back to the probe droid, that's like when Act 1 kind of begins. But this whole first 20 minutes is just establishing us into the danger of Hoth. So it's not an ideal environment, but it's a place they have to go to because of the threat of the Empire.
Plus,
and so we also, and we.
Oh man, anything shot in snow is beautiful.
It is. It really is. Like, there's just a magic to it. I love. This is just me personally. I love blood and snow. That's just one of the violence in snow is so cool. So Hoth, we see that it's a very dangerous environment that the rebels are in. And even in the title crawl, when it says it's a dark time for the rebellion, it's like, but wait a minute, didn't they win from the last film? It's like, actually, yes, but there's some problems with that. They were able to destroy the Death Star, but they're still coming across this great force. And now once they lose that battle, they destroy that battle station, they become a target, more so than they were before. And now their full fleet is after them. So what's also cool in that opening crawl is that we learned that Luke Skywalker is now a leader. So he's now responsible for almost the entirety of the rebellion at this point. Before he was just a kid in the desert.
He's a moisture farmer.
Yeah. And now he's in charge and responsible for the entire rebellion. So in the very beginning in this prologue, we're already seeing a huge amount of both responsibility and development and change in every single person. This movie does, I think, what any good sequel should do. It takes all the established relationships, all the established characters that we got in the first film, and it expands on them, not by backtracking. It moves forward with character. Like I said, in regards to Han, his development is not going back to being that scoundrel person. There's definitely regret when he has to leave the rebellion. His progression, logically, or even just on paper, goes from, at the end of the first film, he was a person who would self-sacrifice for Luke. And that's where we're at with this character. So even though there's been some time jump, even though Luke has developed more with the Force, we're not foreign to this whole world. It feels like we've been with these characters already, and we know what they would do for these people. So they're not strangers to us.
I'm trying to think if there's any strangers in the beginning of it.
Well, there's the general in the rebel fleet, all the strangers, but even then, it's the people that we remember from the rebel. Like, we remember Wedge, and he's in the rebel run in the speed race. We don't know Dax. We don't know the general, but even then, they're not important. They're not the people that we need to worry about, because this film is focusing. It's the exact opposite of A New Hope, where A New Hope was, how do these individuals get to the rebellion? It's now the rebellion has to get away. And now we're going, the individuals are away from the rebellion and they need to escape from the Empire. They're in positions where they cannot be a part of the rebellion, or at least they need to be on their own. So they're kind of forced into a situation with that. At least for Han and Leia and Chewie and C-3PO. And Luke, it's a choice. And that's something we can get into in a little bit here. But yeah, this movie is focusing now more on the individuals. So there really isn't many strangers that we need to either get to know right away.
No, and it's this movie, I find, from start to finish, is all individual growth. Like, Luke's on his own, not the majority of the movie. Like, I actually read a thing where Mark Hamill was talking about how during the filming of this, he almost got into like a little bit of depression because he was literally by himself the whole time talking to a puppet.
Yeah.
And so it's like you look at him, he takes off right away, and yeah, so he's off on his own. And then we got Han, Luke, and Leia, and Han, Chewie, and Leia. They're off on their own on Cloud City, which doesn't go great for them, which even just causes more division. And then you have C-3PO, who he gets taken away, so he's off on his own, causing R2 to not have his companion. And then so the only two that are together the entire movie are Leia and Chewie, who really hadn't known each other at that point. And so it's the whole movie is just people facing, I find, solo trials. Especially Luke, though. Especially Luke,
yeah. The similar to what I said with A New Hope in terms of not understanding how we got to one point or another. I never understood how the Battle of Hoth took place in this film. I always just assumed, okay, it's Star Wars, there's got to be some kind of battle or something, and then it all erupts. I didn't realize that, again, I ignored the opening crawl. The Empire's chasing after the rebels. They don't know where they are, but then they send the probe droids out. One of the probe droids gets destroyed. And so every single thing is, again, this movie is, I almost find this movie difficult to talk about because you have to live so much in the present moment with it. You got to pay attention to every single element that occurs because every single thing comes off of itself. The prologue, everything that happens in the prologue is kind of isolated in itself to reintroduce us to just the core cast. Then after that, we start to stack and every single thing bleeds off from the other thing. The probe droid drops down. Han and Chewie go to check it out, and then they shoot it twice, and it just explodes, mostly from a self-destruction mechanism. And that was so it could lose the signal so that the Empire would be able to track that, then they'd be able to find out what system it was from, what planet. And every single thing that occurs in this movie is happening because of some other event that occurs. So it's just really precise, well-constructed writing. Like you said, it is, I would say that it is one of the best constructed films when it comes to the events for sure. And this is something that developed, especially when we get to Dagobah, but it becomes a movie that is well-structured with introducing us to the new lore and the new mechanics of the Force. Like we said with A New Hope, the lore that is introduced is always introduced with the characters, and it is expanded with them. Their knowledge of these new things is expanded with them after, a really good base was established. And speaking of a well-established base, I gotta mention Darth Vader here. Like, I'm just thinking about Vader right now. I have to. Because like we kind of talked about, Vader is very clearly evil with his presence in the first movie. Mm-hmm. We see him choking a guy like with his own hands. We see him, kind of, it's almost like teasing, mocking, and threatening one of his own people. In this movie, we see him truly as an evil individual, and he doesn't kill anybody except for his own people. Mm-hmm. He doesn't kill any rebels. He doesn't really, sure, he tortures Han later in this movie, but
no, but everything is just for him to get to Luke, because he's just completely obsessed with finding him. And even at this point, he doesn't even really know that he's his son yet. At least at the start of the movie. And so he's just going straight off of, we need to catch this guy. This guy has the Force. We need to catch up with him. And he's just obsessed with them. And so when you look at when you're on the not the Death Star, when you're on the on Vader's ship and they show the Echo base, like the Hoth base, and the Admiral's like, no, like that's not it. It just could be farmers or whatever. And Vader's like, looks, he's like, no, that's where it is, because the Force is drawing him so strongly there. So he's like, no, that's where we're going. We're going here. I need to get my trophy. All he wants is Luke. He will kill anybody in his way to get Luke. Just so happens it's all his own guys.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, you just said Vader doesn't know that Luke Skywalker is his son.
Not at that point, no. When you first get the inclination of that is when you meet the Emperor for the first time. And so the scene where Han, Leia, and everybody on the Falcon, they go through the asteroid field.
Right.
So when they're chasing them in there, he gets a Skype call from the Emperor.
Yeah, he gets the
call so he's got to get him out. So when they leave the asteroid field and he has a conversation with the Emperor, he's like, yeah, like, I'm pretty sure this is Anakin Skywalker's offspring. And his exact response is, well, how can that be? So at the start of the movie, it's straight based off of his love lust of the Force.
Okay, because that's interesting. I actually was rewatching this movie. I rewatched that scene 3 times. 3 times with the special edition, once with the original. Mm-hmm. And I was that was one of those moments that got stuck in my brain of like, what is this moment? Because very clearly in the beginning of this film, he's looking for Luke Skywalker. Mm-hmm. And I'm ignoring the prequels at this point because I just want to focus on
you have to.
But I'm just focusing on this movie in particular, because Vader, when he mentions at the end of the film, Luke, I am your father, he says that with such a certainty and such a devious way just to bring that up, like almost like a reveling, but like he almost knows that this is going to twist the mind of Luke. But he says it with such a certainty that with what you say in terms of that he doesn't know, and then with his conversation with the Emperor, to me that was such a difficult, a weird moment in the film, because I'm just thinking, doesn't he know that Luke Skywalker is his son? And even when the Emperor is saying that this is the thing, that this is the offspring of Anakin Skywalker, doesn't he know that he's Anakin Skywalker?
See, with the prequels being around, this is always making it hard to watch. Because obviously he should know very well, if we're including the prequels, that he had kids. He knew full well Padme was very, very pregnant the last time he saw her. But again, like they took the kids, they hid them. In my opinion, not well, especially for Luke. But again, we'll get into that when we talk about episode
Definitely,
3.
because that's something I
Um,
definitely this movie, when I'm thinking back on it, this movie made me really realize there's a lot of problems to talk about
oh
with
yeah,
those ones. But yeah,
yeah. So we'll talk about that when we get there.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, no. So he knew he had a kid. And I was racking my brain before we did this. To my knowledge, I don't believe, at least to Vader, the name Luke Skywalker was ever talked about. So I don't even know if he actually knows Luke's name. He was the kid who was with Ben, who Ben was clearly probably training. And so that's why he was so obsessed with going after him. And again, it shouldn't have been a huge surprise to him that it was his kid. We just got to accept that the prequels at this point didn't happen. And this was 1980.
Yeah.
Prequel-less times.
There's something interesting. I talked with Noah because I even had to bring him over. I had to have my brother here just to be like, hey, what do you think of this? Because this is one of those moments where I think you need to have someone else to support or to have someone to bounce these thoughts off of, because this is a very thinky movie. Like I said, with A New Hope, that movie made me excited for Star Wars. But this movie had me really pondering Star Wars itself. And it made me want to think about every single thing that these movies present. So I asked him, what do you think of this scene? And he said he actually thinks that Vader knows who Luke is at this point. After, like they mentioned, like the Emperor says, we have a new enemy, the person who blew up the Death Star, that was Luke Skywalker, the offspring of Anakin Skywalker. Now, Vader, I'm sure, knows this, because enough time has probably gone by to the point where Luke has kind of grown a little bit more aware of the Force, and he kind of is able to do things with it that, not many people else who are aware of it can do. But he says that Vader knows this, but the Emperor says immediately that this threat must be destroyed. And so Vader says, he basically says that Vader plays dumb. And he says that Vader is just like, how is this possible? How can this be? To portray this idea that, the Emperor thinks he has this power over Vader. And, he says, I know this thing, and like I've been able to work so well in manipulating and destroying your humanity. Because we even see earlier when Vader gets the helmet locked on, like whoever this is not human. Like he is so destroyed within like his own flesh or whatever that he is not a human being. So maybe he was successful. But then he is aware of it, and if he can try to convince this person, if he can convince Luke to come to his side, he won't have to face the difficult decision of actually killing his own son. And that was interesting to me. It became difficult to really understand, because I don't know, it's one of those moments that really, really takes a lot of thought, and it's not one of those simple, it's not as clear cut as when, Ben just says he betrayed and murdered your father. You go, well, whoa. This one is like you've got to sit with it for a few minutes and really ponder. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Like, what do you think about that?
Well, to me, and we're going to jump ahead into the movie a little bit here. The scene, like when Vader's giving it to Luke and just saying, "Hey, I'm your daddy" and stuff. Wow, that sounded terrible. Now that I say it, you might want to clean that part up.
Luke, I am your daddy. I am your daddy.
I'm really giving it to Luke. Wow. Okay. Anyway, start that again.
Okay.
Vader is like having the conversation with Luke where he's being like, "I'm your father," and he's talking about it, and he's just like, "Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy's father and son." And he talks about how the Emperor has foreseen Luke being able to destroy him. So at that point, like if in my mind, if Vader's playing dumb with the Emperor beforehand, being like, "How can that be?" Then would Vader be from the beginning of the movie? Well, yeah, because I guess he would be trying to like keep his own actions away from the Emperor. See, man, I don't know. Like, there's so many ideas that I think that could come from it. Where, yeah, Vader could have been having these secret agendas of trying to bring Luke over, destroy the Emperor. But in my mind, the Emperor has known this person, has known Vader since he was a child.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with, they're being so in tune with the Force. I just don't know if he could play dumb well enough to the evil Emperor, like Sith Lord. I think he
Yeah.
would just see
Well,
through it.
yeah. Well, that's a connection then again of the Force. Like, is Vader so powerful that he can even cloud the Force and his own energy towards the Emperor? Is that what's being communicated? And it's one of those moments where it becomes difficult to talk about this movie. I don't really, have so much passion about the events that take place because they're very simple in terms of what happens. Han and Leia are running off with a Falcon. It's Luke is going off to Dagobah. They're very simple, but what is more interesting to discuss and what is more fascinating to think about is all the little I don't even know what word it is, but just what is implied or the subtext of these scenes, or even the moments to even consider the mythos or the lore elements or the power of the Force or the monumental moments of character that are revealed. Just talking about either this moment with the Emperor, like the meaning of this, or when Han later down the road says to Leia, like when she says I love you and he says I know, like those moments are so, every moment takes like a paragraph of some like text to unpack. You would need like you could spend hours and hours and hours just unpacking how every single character reacts to certain things. Like how, this is just one that came off my head, but how Han is reacting every single time to the not happening of the hyperdrive. Like how they're trying to go to hyperspace. It happens so many times. Like it happens, I think, 2 times with Han, where he's trying to get them out of the Empire's, get them away from the Empire. And at first we think, okay, it's going to work because we saw it work, no problem in the first movie. And then the addition of this thing that is not working that we thought was just instantaneous automatically puts us in this sense of tension. And we're never escaping from that tension. Like they just escaped from Hoth after just narrowly missing Vader and the Empire. And now they're being chased down by Star Destroyers, not just one. And they're forced to go through an asteroid field. They're forced to go down a hole in an asteroid. They're forced to face these like what I call like blood-sucking space bat leeches that are the most terrifying things. Seriously, when I see them go down the Mylox or that giant worm thing and see the Minox, I freak out. Those are the moments I always had to look down when I was, when I'm this age.
Man, oh man, I hear you. My biggest paranoia in real life is bats. So these are just space bats. So it's just fictional paranoia.
Oh yeah, no, it just makes me uncomfortable. Like even just imagining like the tentacle, like those things that you see on the beach where like you can stick your toe on them and they shoot water up at you.
Yeah.
I just imagine those things shooting out at you with like weird like tendrils on their faces and sucking your eyes out. Ugh, it just makes me really freaked out. And that's another thing that's really cool with this movie is that it really shocks and horrifies me. The Wampa emerging out is scary. In the special edition when you actually see the Wampa eating the Tauntaun, when you see Luke now cut off he's taken the Ben roll. Now he is capable and he cuts off the Wampa's arm. When you see Vader like choking the life out of first the Admiral and then the Captain, and you see the Captain's eyes when he's like on the floor and he looks up, like it looks like the soul is being sucked out of him. This is a horrifying film, and you talk about like the lighting, especially with your established art setup of the kryptonite sequence, like the lighting in that is freaking terrifying. It's such an unsettling movie to think about, and it's not like vile.
Like you look at A New Hope, and it's all about the rebels showing off the weakness of the Empire. They're the ones doing the invading. They're the ones sneak attacking. And this whole movie is them doing it right back to the rebels. And so with this movie, it's obviously the name Empire Strikes Back. It's all about the Empire. It's them pushing the rebellion into a corner, and that's not going to look pretty. That's not going to be a nice scenario.
Yeah. But it's not even like pushing the rebellion into a corner. It's separating, forcing the other group to be separated from the rebellion. Because with the rebellion, there is safety. But once they're, once we get to the end of the film and they're with the rebel fleet and there's so many ships, like we finally feel like there's hope again. Like there's actually some sense of possibility that they can come back from this. But when you're away from this, when you're away from the rebellion, you're just facing this giant fleet, this all-powerful evil force. You just feel alone in this. Like, I understand why. Well, okay. So with Han and Leia, like they're put in a terrible position. And then with what you said with Mark Hamill being depressed, I completely understand, because Dagobah is essentially the same thing, except it's just murky, swampy, sludgy. It's just unpleasant. So this whole movie is not pleasant at all, at least when you're considering it from the human character's angle, especially when you consider C-3PO's angle.
If Growing Pains had a movie, it would be The Empire Strikes Back.
That's another thing. When Luke goes to Dagobah, he's going there because he has assurance that his friends are okay, that his friends are with the rebellion. And so again, when he's realizing that his friends are actually not safe, it's one of those moments where you're just absolutely horrified for him, and you're concerned for them. Because I'm jumping way ahead of this, but when he senses them in the future and he's like, they're in danger, it's like, wait, they're in danger? It's like, but that's where safety is. That's away from the rebellion. All we saw was them escape through the trash when the trash was released, and then very cleverly the Millennium Falcon mixes in with the trash.
Oh, but man, when you get to see Boba Fett fly off because he knows they're hiding in the garbage, man, stealthy little guy.
That's exactly, with what you said with Boba Fett being like a character that you loved, that's actually the moment where I think that Boba Fett defines who he is without having to say anything. He is smart enough to, if he doesn't know Han personally, which with A New Hope Special Edition, he clearly sees Han, so he knows him personally, whatever. But in the original, he doesn't know him personally. So when you see that he's able to do that, this is an intelligent person. And I don't love when the bounty hunters are on the I think it's either the Star Destroyer or on the Dreadnought. The reason I don't love it is because they're right outside of an asteroid field. They're in this very dangerous position. How did they contact them so quickly? How did that happen? So I just assume that a bunch of like bounty hunters are sitting at the phone just like, give me Han Solo. Give me Han Solo. And they pick it up. It's not Han Solo. Okay. Come on, baby. Come on. And they're like, it's not even like at home. They're in their ships, like just waiting. Okay, I got hyperdrive ready to go here. Somebody give me Han Solo. And then like boss picks up. It's like, yeah. Okay. And then just like are there immediately. It's just one of those moments that kind of takes me out. But again, once you see Boba Fett chasing after them, it's worth it. It's worth it. You don't question something like that, because what happens is so much more monumental than a little nitpick of how did they get there? It's like, it doesn't matter, because we're getting into the concept that Han just got betrayed by the one person he thought that he could trust. It's kind of silly now you think about it. It's like, dude, whatever you did to Lando, no loyalty there, bud.
Well, but again, look at Lando though. He's just another character that's Han Solo. They're both card players. They're both scoundrels. He will do whatever he needs to do to better himself. Han Solo will do the exact same thing. Just because he's from our perspective, one of the good guys, he's not a good guy. He's not a good person. Like, he would do the exact same thing. Like, you even look at, we'll go into more Han Solo being a bad guy later. But you look at Billy D. Williams. You look at Lando Calrissian. He has a small little operation, just small enough that people are into it because the Imperials won't find out. It's off the grid. He helps out other people who are a bit shady. So like when he betrays Han, even though they're friends, it's not surprising. Like, it fits his character fully.
Mm-hmm. It does sound surprising, because when when Han says that he can kind of trust Lando, it's not because he says that they're friends. You're right. It is because he says it because he has no love for the Empire. So again, that moment of like, okay, so maybe that is a safe place. No, when we see him go open the door and we see Darth Vader sitting in that chair, that is absolutely terrifying because we assume that this person who says, he has no love for the Empire, we're like, okay, so what is he doing? So it's not only that this individual is corrupt morally, it's that they're corrupt to the position where they will expose their own principles for some level of safety. So this is a really, really dark look at the way that humans even will react. And they are humans, but it's how they will just completely compromise any sense of principle for this war. Like it adds so much more stakes to this entire establishment. We thought it was evil, like easy between good and evil, and now we're seeing that people are corruptible beyond just picking their own side.
Doesn't matter what side they're on.
And it's so cool too, because when we get to see Lando, he really seems like a great guy. Like Billy D. Williams is just such a amazing presence. Like we haven't even talked about performances. I think this is every single actor's best performance in this movie. You can find all of them in this film. Even Alec Guinness's Force Ghost is amazing in this movie. You get, I think, the best from James Earl Jones. If we go into the special editions, you get the best, you got a really great Emperor performance. In the original, I think the Emperor is terrible. I think do you know about who voiced the Emperor in that movie?
Yeah, it was, his name's Clive Revel.
Okay.
Yeah, he did a bunch of like smaller movies back in the day. He did a lot of voice acting. Like the 1990s Batman animated series. He did
really?
Alfred.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
It was a smaller thing. It wasn't anything crazy that he did on here.
Yeah, okay. Cause that was one of those moments in this movie, in the original at least, I was just like, no, that is not. I was watching it on VHS too, and the rest of the movie was pretty solid. But once I saw the Emperor, I was like, okay, I should clarify why. In the special edition for Revenge of the Sith, that's the version of the Emperor they're showing. It's Ian McDiarmid. They're using the same look from that character. While I don't love the look of the Revenge of the Sith Emperor, it is every element with that character is working for that character. The look, the voice, and really what he's saying. Everything lines up perfectly with that individual. With the original, nothing works, I think. The makeup is bad. The voice itself doesn't fit with this creature. It doesn't look human, but it clearly is.
It was very menacing. And like as a voice actor, I think Clive Revel is very decent because he has a very strong voice and it's very just commanding. And so I think they hired him more for that than anything else. Yeah, that was always a hard one because I love the theatricals, but when it always comes to the scene where you meet the Emperor, I'm just like, ah.
Yeah, you make a good point though. Like his voice, I think his voice is fine. I think it's either a thing of pacing with his lines, but I also think it's just like a non-integration of all three elements. Because I don't even know if it was him who was the Emperor, because I read that there was somebody else who was like the body of the Emperor.
The body was, it was a woman actually. I believe she was 86.
Okay.
Something like that. It was an elderly woman who did the body, which was, again, like we talked in the previous video of Star Wars loves its voiceovers.
Yeah.
Absolutely loves it.
Yeah, so it was one of those moments where I just think there's three different elements that are not integrating properly with each other, where with the special edition, I think every one of those elements is working. Even though I don't love the special edition look of the Emperor, it still works.
There is a great disturbance in the Force.
There is a great disturbance in the Force.
We have a new enemy, Luke Skywalker.
We have a new enemy, the young rebel who destroyed the Death Star.
He could destroy us.
He could destroy us.
Yes. Yes. He would be a great asset. Can it be done?
Yes. He would be a great asset.
But regardless, that doesn't detract from the rest of the performances that are in this film. I think every single one of them, especially the extras, with exception to the one pilot on Hoth, but you know,
2 fighters against a Star Destroyer?
everybody else is doing an amazing job in this film. On the big moments and the little moments, especially, like, you can see the amazing tension between Han and Leia in this film. The grand moments of Han, like, getting embraced by Lando. Chewie even is amazing in this movie, where, you know, when he's afraid that Han's going to die when he goes out in Hoth, to when he's afraid he's going to die with the carbonite, to when he's mad at Lando. I think everybody does a great job in this.
Well, don't forget, man. Chewie's the only one that went out looking for 3PO when he went missing. He's the one that found him in the scrap pile. He's the one that started putting them together again. And it's like Chewie's the one that had the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Leia was off getting mad, but Chewie was like, well, I'm going to put my friend back together. I'm going to go find him.
Yeah. Everybody's like telling 3PO, shut up. But he's the one person who's like, where is he? Where's this guy? I know we hate him, but where is he?